Okay, so when I submitted an abstract for this talk, I came up with this innovative title, but now I think that it was a very bad idea because it needs a lot of explaining. So number sense is innate, but is it heritable? So I'm going to do some explaining now. So I'll start with number sense. What is number sense? So it's a relatively new concept, and it refers to this idea that everybody, humans, for example, have this ability to discriminate objects and discriminate information on numerosity. So everybody has some kind of numerical acuity. We're able to extract numerical information from environment, and this acuity comes from largely some kind of innate ability. So we don't learn it, it's not transmitted through culture. So if I ask you very briefly to look around and estimate whether there are more people on this side of the room than this side of the room, you will all be able to come up with some kind of estimate. And it looks like this ability is already present in very, very young babies. So babies already at 3 months old are able to discriminate between numerosities, which we know through various habituation paradigms. This ability is also present in animals. Animals are able to extract numerical information from environments. And this ability also seems to be present in indigenous populations who don't have culturally transmitted mathematical knowledge. Indeed, this particular indigenous population doesn't even have any numbers beyond 5 in their language, and yet they're very good at comparing large numerosities and even being able to add up approximately these numerosities and subtract numerosities through various paradigms. So it is clear that we are able to extract numerical information from environments, and this ability seems to be innate. So it is evolutionarily important device that we all have. The question, however, is whether number sense varies across people. So when I asked you this question about trying to estimate whether there are more people on this side of the room than this side of the room, some people will be excellent at that, and other people will not be very precise. So if I asked you whether you've just seen more blue dots or yellow dots, you might think you were guessing. But actually, people are quite good at that. Even when people think they're guessing, they're actually quite accurate at this. So in this particular task, what would you say? More yellow dots, maybe? So this is a very, very small difference between the ratio. The ratio is very small between blue and yellow dots, the number of blue and yellow dots. And some people will be excellent at this, so they will be very precise at this task, and other people not so much. So what do we know about this individual variation in number sense? Well, we don't really have any reliable information from animals. We don't know if one squirrel is better than another squirrel on estimating food in the environment or something like this. In human babies, there is a lot of variation, but it's very difficult to know whether it's stable, so we again don't have very much information on that. In children, there is some information that suggests that there is reliable individual variation, and it's kind of stable across ages. And also there is this, there are several studies that show that children vary in this SPHON ability, which is spontaneous focusing on numbers. So some children just have this interest in numerical information, and others seem to completely ignore it. And it is possible that individual variation are kind of based on this SPHON ability. But again, we know actually very little about it. In adults, there are only a few studies that suggest some consistent, stable variation in number sense. Another thing that I need to mention is that actually this number sense ability seems to be heterogeneous. It's not like there is one type of number sense. There are different tasks that seem to be tapping into number sense, and actually different tasks of number sense don't seem to be correlating very highly, and I'll come back to this point. So why is it all important? Well, I'm largely interested in individual variation in mathematical ability and in all STEM-related subjects. And there is this hypothesis that the individual variation in number sense is somehow related to mathematical ability. Of course, we know that there are multiple predictors of mathematical ability, that there are many different things that are involved. So there is general ability, cognitive ability, there is spatial ability, there are many other things that are important for variation in mathematics. But there is one leading hypothesis at the moment that perhaps individual variation in number sense is also contributing to mathematical variation beyond all these other contributions. So, and we know from a lot of research that mathematical ability is heritable. The influence of genes on mathematical ability is moderate to high, and in adulthood seems to be very high. And we also know that approximately one third of this genetic variation in mathematics seems to be not related to IQ or reading ability. So there is something specific. And so the leading hypothesis today is perhaps it is the genetic variation in number sense that is uniquely contributing to genetic variation in mathematics, or they overlap. So what do we know about the relationship between number sense and mathematics? So we know that accuracy in estimation on, for example, a number line task, which I'll show you in a minute, which is another kind of tapping into the number sense, is positively correlated with mathematical achievement. We know that the variation in the task that I've just shown you, the blue and yellow dots, is also correlated with mathematics and seems to be stably correlated with mathematics at different ages. But actually, beyond this, we know very little. We don't know the direction of causation. We don't know whether, for example, being good at mathematics drives good number sense, or whether it's the other way around. We don't know the developmental relationship, and we certainly don't know the nature of this association. And largely, we don't know this because actually we don't know anything about heritability of number sense. So we don't know how highly heritable is this ability. We know that it's an evolutionary important thing, but actually individual variation in this ability could be driven by entirely environmental influences or entirely genetic influences, and we really don't know what is the case. So the research questions for this particular study were just to have a look whether individual differences in number sense are highly heritable. And many people who work in mathematical cognition whom I spoke to before we conducted this study placed their bets on very high heritability of number sense. And then finally we can also ask later if we estimate the genetic influences on number sense as high, we can ask a question of whether these genes are actually the same genes that contribute to mathematical variation. So I won't go into the twin method. Corina did an excellent job of presenting it. So just to remind you, we're looking at monozygotic and dizygotic twins who are raised together. It's very important. And so this comparison allows us to estimate the shared and non-shared environmental influences and also genetic influences. And just very quickly to remind you about the twin correlations. So if we look at the monozygotic twin correlation, the extent to which monozygotic twins are not identical on a particular trait indicates the influence of non-shared environments, something in the environments that make the two twins in the same family different from each other, even when they have identical genes. And this difference between monozygotic and dizygotic twins indicates some kind of genetic influence. So the data that I'm presenting today comes from the twins early development study. You already heard about it from Corina. This current sample is actually only the first cohort of this study, because the second cohort of the study is still in progress. We're collecting data now. So our twins are now 16 years of age. And so this is the first time that we've measured number sense in our sample. Unfortunately, we don't have number sense measures on any previous occasion. So this is the first time we're looking at it. So currently we have collected data from just over 1,000 pairs of twins. 1/3 of them are monozygotic twins and 2/3 are dizygotic of same sex and opposite sex. And so this is the task. I've already presented it. So you have to, you see the presentation of the dots very quickly. They flash in front of you, and you have to say whether you see more yellow or more blue dots, and the ratio between the two colors changes from very easy to very hard. Another task that we used was the number line task, where you have to position a number on this number line, which is, the idea is that you have some kind of mental spatial representation of numbers, and the precision of positioning the number taps into this numerical intuition of some sort. So different people would be positioning the number at different places. Okay? We had another number sense kind of tapping task where you just have to very quickly say whether the number of dots matches the presented number. And what we found, and I won't present this data here, is that actually these different tasks of number sense don't correlate with each other very highly. So the correlation is only about 0.3. So they're tapping into some different aspects of number sense. So just to remind you, our twins are 16 at this point, and the data is collected on the internet. So there's a web administration of tasks. We collect them over internet. We record reaction times and accuracy. So the data that I'll present today is just accuracy, but the reaction times are very similar. So these are the twin correlation for the 3 number sense tasks. So dot estimation, number line, and dot number. The striking thing immediately here is that actually none of these number sense tasks that don't correlate with each other seem to be very familial. So the two monozygotic twins even, so this is the monozygotic twins, only correlate about 0.3 with each other. So the task is not familial, which indicates a lot of non-shared environmental effects on this trait. And then from this twin correlation, by model fitting, we're estimating the proportion of genetic, shared, and non-shared environments on individual variation in number sense. And what we see is that the genetic influence is very low for the dot estimation task, shared environment, not significant, a lot of non-shared environment. Number line task, low heritability, huge non-shared environment, the same here. And you see the complete opposite for mathematics. We have high heritability, moderate non-shared environment, no shared environment. So actually this was very surprising. We really didn't expect that. We expected the kind of the normal cognitive trait picture, and it looks like variation in number sense seems to be stemming largely from non-shared environmental effects. So number sense is, first of all, heterogeneous. It's not one thing. There are different kind of abilities that underlie it. It's not one construct. Variation in number sense seems to be under strong environmental control, but non-shared, things that make two twins in the same family different from each other. So we observe low twin correlations. So two twins, even MZ in the same family, are not very similar, and no shared environment. So what does this all mean? So we have low heritability. Does it mean that then number sense genes are not involved in mathematics? Well, actually it doesn't mean that. Perhaps this low heritability of number sense is that those unique genes in mathematical ability. We can't really address this question yet. We're waiting for the second cohort. So of course you would ask the question about the validity of these measures. So these are largely experimental measures. But actually the validity and reliability of the number sense measures are okay. They're not brilliant, but they are not largely different from any other cognitive measures. And certainly in TEDS we have measures that have even lower validity but produce the standard cognitive ability picture of high or moderate heritability. So we don't think it's the validity problem. It seems to be true that something is special about this number sense. So if you want to know more about number sense and mathematics, so I would like to advertise the talk in tomorrow's symposium, which is all on mathematics, and Maria Tosta will be giving a talk looking specifically at this issue. So first of all, the prediction from number sense to mathematics longitudinally, and also this interesting picture. So we have mathematics, high heritability, moderate non-shared environment, number sense, complete opposite. So what is going on there? How are they related? Through non-shared environments or through genes? So I'll leave this question open. I'd like to thank Robert Norman, Maria Tosta, Justin Halberda, who's the colored dot task is his. We've been collaborating very closely to making this task work and being reliable. And of course, our funders. Thank you very much. Take it.